At 12:41 p.m., under the harsh white glare of the Yorkshire midday sun, Leeds didn't riot. It erupted. A sharp crack snapped across the forecourt of the 22-story tower block, followed by the piercing screech of metal giving way. Then in one violent burst, the entire ground floor window shattered outward, sending thousands of glass fragments spraying into the daylight like silver shrapnel. The crowd, already tense after hours under lockdown directive, broke instantly. People surged forward in panic, pushing, shoving, climbing over one another in a frantic scramble for escape. A group at the front roared as they heaved a police car onto its side, the crash of its frame hitting the tarmac echoing like a blow to the city's chest. Smoke from burning rubbish curled upwards, turning the bright sky a murky, distorted haze. Within seconds, what had been a contained lockdown turned into a full-scale urban flash-hunt. Families screamed for each other, alarms wailed, and the ground trembled beneath the force of the crowd. And in the middle of this sunlit chaos, Leeds was about to face something far darker. The most explosive daytime breakdown Yorkshire has seen in decades. By early afternoon, the heat over Yorkshire had settled into a sharp, unwavering glare. The kind that exposes everything, including tension. Ledyards, a city built on stacked tower blocks and tight residential estates, was already carrying the weight of unease long before the glass shattered. The lockdown directive issued that morning had sealed the 22-story block without warning. Doors were barricaded, exits taped off, and officers positioned along the perimeter. Official statements described it as a temporary containment measure. Yet for the nearly 2,500 residents inside, it felt more like imprisonment in broad daylight. Small crowds gathered first, mothers demanding medication for their children, elderly residents begging to be escorted out for air. Phones were raised, live streams began, and comments poured in across social media, accusing the government of treating tower block residents like lab subjects. Each passing minute tightened the emotional noose. By 12:15 p.m., the mood had shifted. A man shouted that his father was still trapped on the 14th floor. Another group claimed food supplies had already run out. The police insisted none of it was true, but no one believed them anymore. The tension became tactile, a kind of static hanging in the air. A bottle shattered on the pavement. Someone kicked a metal barrier. Children clung to their parents as officers attempted to reinforce the cordon, but the noise of the crowd swelled into something deeper, something collective and dangerous. Rumors fled the lockdown would last 48 hours. People inside were fainting. The lift systems had failed. None of it was confirmed. Yet, all of it was believed. Leeds wasn't collapsing yet, but the ground was already shifting beneath it, silently preparing for the explosion to come. The explosion of glass didn't just break the window. It broke the crowd. The moment the ground floor pane detonated outward, a shock wave pulsed through the forecourt like a physical force. For a fraction of a second, there was silence, a breath held by an entire city. Then the screams began. People surged forward as if yanked by a single violent command. Parents shoved their children ahead, hands clawing at backpacks, coats, anything that offered leverage. The first few fell instantly, swallowed by the crush of bodies behind them. The officers nearest the entrance tried to brace their shields, but the weight of the crowd folded their line in seconds. Get back. Move back. Their voices were drowned by the roar. Inside the shattered entrance, the corridor lights flickered. Dust from the collapsing frame drifted through the air like smoke. Dozens of residents who had been trapped upstairs now sprinted down the stairwell, stumbling into the oncoming wave of people breaking in. Two currents collided, those trying to escape and those forcing their way in, creating a chaotic vortex of bodies packed so tightly that no one could fully breathe. A metal barrier clanged as someone hurled it into the side of a police van. Another smash followed, the unmistakable sound of a windscreen breaking. Within moments, a group of youths swarmed the vehicle, rocking it violently. Officers sprinted towards them, but were pelted with bottles, bricks, food cans, anything that rage could weaponize. The van tipped, hovered for a heartbeat, then crashed onto its side, sirens still blinking weakly in the midday sun. The crowd erupted, some in shock, others in triumphant fury. From above, the first of 7 police helicopters dipped low, blades chopping the sky into a frantic tremor. Their loudspeakers crackled. "Stand back. Move away from the building. This is a restricted zone." But the wind from the rotors only whipped the smoke and dust deeper into the street, fueling the hysteria. Across the road, a fire engine tried to push through, red lights flashing, horn blaring, but the crowd surged toward it, blocking its path. People beat its bonnet with fists and shouted at the crew to get out. The firefighters, unable to move without running someone over, were forced to reverse while a shower of debris rained onto their windscreen. Then the sound no one was prepared for. A deep concrete splitting crack from somewhere halfway up the tower. Heads snapped upward. Phones shot into the air. A chunk of gray concrete broke loose from the 10th floor, spinning through the sunlight before smashing onto the pavement with a heavy, gut-puncturing thud. "It's collapsing," someone screamed. That was all it took. Panic tore through the crowd like a wildfire in dry wind. The mass of bodies contracted, then exploded outward. People ran in every direction, tripping, falling, dragging others down with them. A woman's shriek cut through the chaos as she was knocked to the ground, her palms scraping across shattered glass. A teenage boy leapt over her, only to be yanked down by the shoulder as another wave crushed into them. In the middle of the chaos, a rumor ignited. Fast, irrational, unstoppable. The tower has dangerous material stored inside. If it collapses, the basement will explode. No one knew where the rumor came from. Someone's cousin, someone overheard, someone live-streamed it, but it spread instantly. Within minutes, tens of thousands watching online repeated it as fact. The fear became absolute. Officers tried to form a shield wall, but objects rained down like hail. Bottles, bricks, shattered plastic, metal cans. One officer stumbled backward, clutching his helmet as a stone ricocheted off the visor. Another collapsed after being hit in the ribs, dragged away by colleagues as the crowd pressed harder. Inside the building, residents scrambled down stairwells, choked with dust and smoke. Families fought to stay together. Someone fainted on the 8th floor landing. A child screamed for their mother. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long, trembling shadows across the walls. Outside, a second police vehicle was swarmed by a new group of rias. Officers struck their batons against shields, shouting, "Move back." But the sound was swallowed by the riot's deafening heartbeat. The vehicle rocked violently, though it didn't flip. Its side mirror snapped off and skidded across the pavement. More concrete flakes rained down, not from collapse, but from vibrations and stress. Yet to the crowd, every speck was proof the tower was moments from detonating. A man collapsed at the foot of the entrance. His leg twisted unnaturally. A paramedic attempted to reach him, but was forced back when the crowd surged again. The man's cries were lost under the stampede of feet and sirens. By 12:49 p.m., less than 10 minutes after the glass first shattered, the scene had transformed into a full-scale urban breakdown. Smoke blurred the outlines of the tower. Helicopters thundered overhead. Officers retreated and reformed. Families were scattered. Hundreds were injured. And through it all, the tower loomed, scarred, shaking in the heat haze. A symbol of the moment when control didn't slip, didn't fade. It collapsed. The moment the riot tipped into full-scale collapse was not marked by a single sound, but by the sudden realization that the police no longer controlled the street. As the helicopters circled overhead, the remaining officers on the ground attempted to regroup along the main access road. Riot police formed a hard perimeter, locking shields together in a tight arc while mounted units pushed forward in an attempt to prise open a narrow escape route for trapped civilians. The horses snorted and reared, hooves striking the tarmac as the crowd pressed dangerously close. But the pressure was relentless. On the far side of the block, the metal security fencing, hastily installed just hours earlier, buckled under the weight of hundreds pushing against it. A loud metallic groan rippled across the street before the structure gave way entirely. People surged through the gap, spilling into the service lane behind the tower, where bins were overturned and debris littered the ground like shrapnel. A police tactical vehicle attempted to seal the breach, but it was immediately surrounded. Officers hammered batons against their shields to warn the crowd back. Yet the noise was swallowed by the roar of hundreds. To break free, the vehicle was forced to reverse, tires screeching as objects clattered off its reinforced panels. Inside nearby shopfronts, some residents, panicked, exhausted, and desperate, smashed vending machines and tills, grabbing water, inhalers, snacks, anything to keep going. It wasn't organized looting. It was survival in the middle of a city losing its balance. Then came another blow. From halfway up the tower, a thin fracture line appeared along the concrete facade. Not structural failure, but superficial damage from earlier vibrations. Still, to the people below, it looked like the beginning of the end. Leeds City Council, already overwhelmed by emergency calls, issued a rushed statement urging calm. But their words meant little. On the ground, nothing resembled calm. What began as containment had unraveled into something far larger. A city wrestling with the consequences of a lockdown pushed past its breaking point. Leeds was no longer holding the line. It was splitting apart. Inside Downing Street, the atmosphere shifted from concern to outright panic within minutes of the first helicopter footage hitting national broadcasts. What had begun as a controlled containment measure was now spiraling into the most visible domestic breakdown of Star's term. By 10:02 p.m., emergency advisors were summoned into the Cabinet Office Situation Room. Screens showed live images of Leeds, a police car on its side, smoke rising from the forecourt, thousands surging like a single furious tide. A senior official muttered that this looked like Brixton 81 with smartphones. Starmer's first public statement was rushed, delivered with a careful tone meant to sound reassuring. The situation in Leeds is under active control. We urge the public to remain calm and follow instructions from local authorities, but outside the reaction was instant and brutal. Commentators accused him of downplaying a disaster unfolding in real time. Opposition MPs posted clips of the chaos with captions like, "This is what happens when a lockdown is enforced without a plan." The political firestorm intensified when a leaked internal memo surfaced online. It allegedly showed that structural concerns about the tower had been flagged to the government 3 days earlier. A detail official scrambled to deny, claiming it was misinterpreted guidance. Inside the crisis room, voices clashed. Should the lockdown be lifted? Should the army be placed on standby? Should Starmer address the nation again? No option seemed safe. Every answer carried the risk of inflaming the city further. For the first time all afternoon, the government appeared less like the authority in charge and more like bystanders watching the fallout of their own directive. Leeds wasn't the only thing cracking. The government's credibility was fracturing with it. Amid the sirens, the shouting, and the relentless churn of the crowd, there were moments, brief, fragile moments, where humanity broke through the chaos. Near the fallen police van, a young mother clung to her son, both of them coated in dust. Her voice trembled as she tried to shield him from the crush, whispering, "Keep your eyes on me, love. Just breathe. I've got you." A volunteer medic spotted them, weaving through the bodies with nothing but a bright orange first aid pouch and sheer determination. He guided them out through a thin gap in the riot police shield wall, his hands shaking from exhaustion. Not far away, an elderly man sat slumped against a bollard, his leg twisted painfully beneath him. Blood seeped through the tear in his trouser leg. A teenage girl who moments earlier had been recording the riot on her phone dropped to her knees beside him, using her jumper as a makeshift splint. She didn't know his name, and he didn't know hers. But her steady voice calmed him more than any police loudspeaker could. A young officer, barely in his 20s, stumbled backward as a bottle struck his shield. He was trembling, clearly overwhelmed. Yet, when he spotted a child trapped near the shattered entrance, he pushed forward again, pulling the boy free even as debris rained around them. For a heartbeat, the riot wasn't about anger, directives, or politics. It was about people scared, hurting, reaching for each other in the middle of a city losing control. By mid-afternoon, the heat haze over Leeds had blurred into a smoky veil. The tower loomed behind it, battered, scarred, but still standing, while the streets below pulsed with the aftershocks of everything that had unfolded. Sirens echoed in the distance. Debris lay scattered like the remnants of a battle no one had meant to start. In the hours that followed, officials insisted the rumors were false. There were no explosive materials, no imminent detonation, no structural threat beyond surface damage. But for thousands who had been there, who had run, fallen, shouted, bled, truth no longer felt like something delivered from a podium. What mattered was what they believed in the moment. And in that moment, fear had spread faster than facts. Leeds wasn't just a riot scene. It was a fracture, a reminder of how quickly trust collapses when authority pushes too hard, too fast, under the unforgiving light of day. Whether the blame lay with the directive, the rumors, or the pressure boiling inside a lockdown community, one thing was certain. Britain had witnessed a warning written not in policy, but in panic. What should the government do next?